Oh, so we had our. Oh, yeah, not that dry. Okay, that's quite more information than I need, but that's okay.
I went back down to Miami.
You have.
I went back down to Miami, so I'm coming back here tomorrow.
I appreciate that too, because it's nice and quiet now.
Hey there. And you have a photo ID?
Do I?
Yeah.
Do I have my promise? I'm working for it. Well, yeah, I really
No, I mean, this is just other information.
Gotcha.
Yes,
And I think part of it is the travel money is just not there.
Yeah, it's a little expensive.
Budget follow-alls this year, so.
Yeah.
we won't get into the tax stuff.
He did.
Okay. We'll see you later.
All right.
Lunch.
I'll probably.
We'll have a bigger crowd tomorrow because that's the exhibit hall opens. They start getting the general session stuff. The governor should be here.
Oh, that's good.
It's scheduled to be here. Whether he comes or not is dependent on other things.
Big man. The big man.
Yep. Well, one thing I've learned watching upper echelon politicians and civil servants over the years, they have a lot of people who want to get their
It's a combination of temperature and chemistry, or in this case, salt. Salt water weighs more than does fresh water and is more dense and will sink. And what happens, it appears, that when the thermohaline is strong, as it's been since '95, this flow of water here has gone up and been stronger, and there's been more sinking of water in the North Atlantic. And then this deep water, this water that sank, the deep levels comes back like that. Now this is roughly what we've had since '95. Now before that, in a quarter century, of 1970 to '94, we were in this classic period when this circulation was weak. There was less sinking here. And the Gulf Stream was the same. What happens when this is weak? This gyre becomes stronger. The trades tend to be stronger. The westerly winds tend to be stronger. And we have more advection of cold water and air coming down here. So when, in this period, the eastern evaporate, you take the water vapor up, but you leave the salt behind. So when you got enhanced evaporation, you have a buildup of salt in the water. In the Atlantic, due to the higher salinity, has this buildup of salt. And you look at the other basins, there's no basins that have as high a salt content as the Atlantic does. It's sort of cut off from all these other basins. And this special area apparently occurred about 2 or 3 million years ago when the Isthmus of Panama filled in, and you kind of isolate the Atlantic from the other ocean basins except at this southern area here. Now, if you go down to 500 meters, you have more of a dominant effect here, very high salt. So that's what makes things so different. So now, if this is sea surface temperatures, you know, the tropics, the sea surface temperatures are warmer, they're colder here, and we tend to have the Gulf Stream and warm water advected up to the North Atlantic. Now, when we look at salt, we see the same sort of thing. We have high salt in the subtropical areas here. This is where the big high pressures are, and you don't have any rain much. But you've got winds. The trade winds are blowing here. The westerly winds are blowing here, and you have evaporation going on, but no rain much, so the salt builds up. So the Gulf Stream goes up and advects both high salt to the north and advecting high temperatures. And when you look at these, they correlate very well. My colleague Phil Klotzbach got this data, and you see back in the late 50s, 60s, when the thermohaline was stronger, we had more salt in the North Atlantic. Then we had this down period when we had less salt, now we have more. So it's this buildup of North Atlantic salt and the strength of this flow that's making this period from 95 on so active in major hurricanes.
Returned the whole program, kicked over fire ant mounds, and along about December last year, it came to a head when we started getting hate mail about what we had done to the citizens of Southwest Florida. And Jamie, what have you done to the citizens of Southwest Florida? We had a few phone calls, we had a few emails, and we could tell right away, Jamie and I, that we're talking this way, and the officials over there were talking this way. We're all smart people. We ought to be able to figure out a way to get us talking this way. So that led to a meeting over in Punta Gorda at the end of January. Anybody in here was at that meeting? That's good and bad in a way. It means that they don't feel like they need to have this conversation again. The bad thing is I'd like to have a foil in there to play some of what went on over there. I'm going to try to do the same thing I did there. Rather than me giving you a lecture first, from what you've seen so far, where do you think we're going in storm surge? Any ideas? Inundation, that's correct.
Improving the accuracy of the predictions.
We'd love to improve the accuracy of the predictions, that's correct.
More probabilities.
Probabilistic forecasting was just implemented operationally, so that's out there. But guess what on probabilities? How many of you understand how to use it? Anyone here understand how to use it? Even Mike didn't raise his hand, and he helped develop it. It's not easy. Storm surge is, if you think you may have some questions about how you understand it, wait till you dig down your elected officials and then your John Q. Publics that you want to do the right thing on it. And that's where we are right now, and I'll get around to showing some stuff. What are some concerns some of you might have about where you've heard we're going with storm surge? Any?
Well, there's some concern. I mean, I'm aware that they've been doing a lot of LiDAR technology to reassess elevations. And of course, from a floodplain manager's perspective, you're looking at flood insurance issues and what's going to happen to the coastal communities to bolster those programs as well. Taking the information and the data and
Yeah, that's one of my big concerns is, and for probably a different reason you're coming at, I'll get to in a few moments, but it is a very big concern. How many, does anyone in here think where we're going with this, the wrong approach?
Where are you going with it? I don't know how to answer the question.
Okay.
I don't know where you're going with it.
Evacuation.
More conservative
Yeah.
approach?
Oh no.
Where are we coming from?
All right, then I'll give the talk
Yeah,
first. See, when we were over in southwest Florida, they all knew the answers, and we were the people that needed to be educated. So I got that off the table real quick. Actually, all I did is listen to people talk, and the one county that got it ended up persuading the other counties that didn't, why it was they didn't get it, and Jamie and I said nothing, which if you know Jamie, and you obviously know me, for us to say nothing is duct tape over lips. All right, so I'm going to show you, this is Jamie's talk with a few added things that have actually gained this week at this meeting. That's why I love to come to these. I learn something new every year on that. Underestimation of risk. This is one of the things when I'm giving serious talks that I spend a lot of time on, and I'm not obviously for this, but floodplain management, flood insurance is based on the 100-year event. The most misused piece of information I've ever seen in my career, bar none. I don't know how many people out there actually think when you tell them that they're outside the 100-year floodplain, think they're not at risk for flooding. Most don't. And we think that's stupid, but think about it. You buy your house on, say up on Tampa Bay somewhere, and you're outside the 100-year floodplain. You move there from western North Carolina. You're a medical doctor. What do you care about storms and storm surge other than, gee, I guess I'd like to know a little bit about them maybe? Who's going to tell me philosophy for what return of frequency is for storm surge as we do for rainwater flooding? The data sets we've got for rainwater flooding are pretty rigorous, so when you say it's a 100-year event, it probably is pretty close, but it's not that exact. I mean, we don't know the long-term trends or even some of the cycles in between, but at least it follows some mathematical principle. We don't think we're there yet with storm surge. We don't have a long enough period of record or accurate enough data to make that statement. So when we make decisions on where to build on storm surge, it's already at a quote 100-year event, and you just pull a few numbers out, one or two of the outliers out, and get totally different answers. We're very uncomfortable with the fact that we're using that, especially in the Gulf Coast of the U.S. and some of the places in the southeast where really high values and very far inland penetration can occur. And of course, storm surge does that. I've long since pretty much given up on saving property because I don't think we're ever going to change the laws on land use. I certainly don't know how to do it. So my goal is to save lives. The only way to save lives is to make sure people know what they're at risk of and know what to do when you, the local official, tells them to do it. Not with me. They're not going to listen to me. I'm down here in Miami. If you're in Tampa Bay, I'm just an idiot down here in a foreign country known as South Florida. But the emergency manager in Tampa stand up and say, you got to leave. Hopefully they'll listen to you if they know they're at risk. If they don't know they're at risk, they're going to seek some other information that corroborates whether they really need to go or not. And my experience in Houston, it was pretty much on our street, is Donna leaving? That's my wife. And if she's leaving, we better get the hell out of Dodge because she's got insider information. And that's, you really want your citizens to work on that theory? Because what happens is on the flip side of it, you get a Rita. You see Martha leading down the street, you're 60 miles from the water, that everything they own is piled in the car and they're driving out, and then suddenly it dominoes, and you have all these other people that don't need to leave. So educating people at their risk is an important thing. And more studies were done. We actually started formal. This is another example. These are, this is in the Savannah, Georgia area, which is a lot like the west coast of Florida, highly vulnerable to very far inland penetration of surge. And look at all the people that answered greens, not very likely, all the way down to the mouth of the Savannah River, which is only, I would say part of the time it is part of the ocean. The tide goes up, it floods, and these people don't think they're at risk of storm surge? Oh my God, you know why? Last time they had it, 1893. Not too many of them were around in 1893, so it didn't happen to them. That's another one of our challenges, which is not as hard in Florida. It's amazing. You hear us talk about, God, it's been 6 years since a hurricane here in Florida. people have gotten complacent and forgot. Think about our challenges in New England, the upper mid-Atlantic, Georgia, places, Jacksonville. How many of your citizens really think they're at risk of a hurricane, Steve?
Not nearly enough.
Not nearly enough, because it's not happened to them. There's no personalizing of the threat to it, and human nature is such that until there's an event, it's going to be hard to do. Right here in Florida, one of my new heroes is Wayne Saladay. He was a goat during Charlie, apparently. I didn't know him then, so I can't attest to that, but he has done some really nifty studies, and I'll show you some nifty mitigation techniques he's developed. But he confirmed that, I hear everywhere when I moved here that Florida's the model. We should follow Florida everywhere. We're different than everyone else. We know hurricanes. Those numbers are no different than anywhere else, folks. We have the same problems here as elsewhere on the coast as far as personal attachment to the risks. The risks are different. You have to hold about anything we're doing in storm surge on the details, including graphics like these that can highlight the threat. This is the vulnerability, as we would, the worst possible Category 3 areas of inundation. Now, I end up briefing regional and national people, so it's important for me to have graphics of this scale. You want your scales down to your county or regional level. For this meeting, we chose a large Cat 4 on Florida. On the old basins, this is the inundation you would see, potential inundation, and on the new, and if you just saw, I'll block the view for some of you there, but old, new, old, new.
No, it's on your face.
Groundhog Day, day 4, this happens. See why I don't normally teach these folks? Is that any better?
Yeah.
The new and the old. And you see, unfortunately, the worst threat areas, the increases, have been this portion of the coast. And you can't tell particularly on this graphic because it doesn't have demographic information, but that's where you've got the largest concentration of built-in society. I mean, you can go up here and jack in all kinds of surge, and other than flushing out the oyster fields and making a really big mosquito crop right afterwards, the impact isn't nearly as bad as down here on the southwest and south central west coast. Not as much difference was made on the east. Not to neglect Baja, Georgia up there in Jacksonville, but that should tell you you've got a really bad problem there. The St. Johns River complicates the hell out of everything and the kind of storm surge you're going to get. And I don't think it's the easiest to model. Is that correct, Mike? So if there was an area in Florida where I'm concerned about our accuracy in it, it would be the complications caused by a major river in Jacksonville. But be that as it may, if you've been up in that area, that floods a whole lot of things besides just the TPC golf course out at Sawgrass and Palm Beach, which would be terrible. Blasphemy, How could we rack out a golf course? Well, how do we display this stuff? Jamie's getting into the religious spirit of, he likes my sermons, so he's got his own now. Elevation is the salvation from inundation. Build high, live low. Okay? Well, and where you live makes all the difference in the world, and as far as storm surge. And that's our problem. A lot of people wanted us to come up with an index after we corrected how we use Saffir-Simpson. Saffir-Simpson used to be not on our web page, because actually the Hurricane Center was backing away from this about a decade ago, but we had these tables out there that people were using that had surge in those ranges, which marginally met some portions of the Gulf in Florida, but almost nowhere was it accurate. It was never, back in the day when that was done, we didn't have a storm surge model. It implies more risk to them that live over there. It's a no-brainer. They figure it out right away. So that's where we've gone with that. Okay, where are we? Believes it applies to them. Now that requires psychology, and I profess no knowledge of the human mind, including my own. But other people are working on it. Laurie here is working on it. Social scientists at FIU, social science in Colorado, and a whole bevy of people up in the D.C. area now are in other forecast offices is how we're going to convey this information in the short range part of the problem, the 6 to 12 hours as the landfall is underway. And we're making some headway on that, and the hardest problem is getting all our ducks in a row because it's so different what people call stuff. Up in the Gulf Coast in Florida, all pretty much use the same terminology and are comfortable with the word surge. You go up north of the Delmarva, they don't like the word surge. I do not know why. They want to use the same warnings that they use for winter storms. And I guarantee you, when they put that out and there's a big surge coming, everyone will say, I've been through winter storms and it never flooded like this. Remember that statement, because you'll hear it someday. I'll be retired. Text me, I'll be on a golf course. It'll pop up on the screen. This is an idea we had of capturing the area that was a threat. The nominal starting point for debate is 4 feet elevation. That'll kill people. Try getting out of your driveway when the water's 4 feet deep on the street to evacuate. So we want to warn people anything of 4 feet or above chance of occurring of storm surge for the evacuation part of the